The learning of Asaph, my people, perceive ye my law, bow your ear into the words of my mouth. I shall open my mouth in parables. I shall speak perfect reasons from the beginning. How great things have we heard, and we have known those, and our fathers have told to us. Those be not hid from the sons of them in another generation. And they told the praisings of the Lord, and the virtues of him, and his marvels which he did. And he raised witnessing in Jacob, and he setted law in Israel. How great things commanded to our fathers, to make those known to their sons, that another generation know. Sons that shall be born, and shall rise up, shall tell out to their sons, that they set their hope in God, and forget not the works of God, that they seek or search his commandments, lest they be made a shrewd generation, and stirring to wrath, as the fathers of them, a generation that dressed not his heart, and his spirit was not believed with God. The sons of Ephraim, bending a bow and sending arrows, were turned in the day of battle. They kept not the testament of God, and they would not go in his law, and they forgot his beneficences, and his marvels which he showed to them. He did marvels before the fathers of them, in the land of Egypt, in the field of Tanis. He brake the sea, and led them through it, and he ordained the waters, as in a bouquet. And he led them forth in a cloud of the day, and all night in a lightning of fire. He brake a stone in desert, and he gave water to them, as in a much depth. And he led water out of the stone, and he led forth waters as floods. And they put it yet to do sin against him. They excited the high God into ire, in a place without water. And they tempted God in their hearts, that they asked meats to their lives. And they spake evil of God, and they said, whether God make ready a board in a desert? For he smote a stone, and waters flowed, and streams went out in abundance. Whether also he may give bread, either make ready a board to his people. Therefore the Lord heard and delayed, and fire was kindled in Jacob, and the ire of God ascended on Israel. For they believed not in God, neither hoped in his health. And he commanded the clouds above, and he opened the gates of heaven, and he rained to them manna for to eat, and he gave to them bread of heaven. Man ate the bread of angels. He sent to them meats in abundance. He turned over the south wind from heaven, and he brought in by his virtue the west wind. And he rained fleshes as dust on them, and also volatiles feathered, as the gravel of the sea. And those fell in the midst of their castles, about the tabernacles of them. And they ate, and were filled greatly, and he brought their desire to them. They were not defrauded of their desire, yet their meats were in their mouth. And the wrath of God ascended on them, and he killed the fat men of them, and he hindered the chosen men of Israel. In all these things they sinned yet, and believed not in the marvels of God. And the days of them failed in vanity, and the years of them failed with haste. When he killed them, they sought him, and they turned again, and early they came to him. And they bethought that God is the helper of them, and the high God is the again buyer of them. And they loved him in their mouth, and with their tongue they lied to him. Forsooth, the heart of them was not rightful with him, neither they were had faithful in his testament. But he is merciful, and he shall be made merciful to the sins of them, and he shall not destroy them. And he did greatly to turn away his ire, and he kindled not all his ire. And he bethought that they be flesh, a spirit going, and not turning again. How oft made they wroth in desert? How oft made they him wroth in desert? They stirred him into ire in a place without water. And they returned and tempted God. And they wrapped the Holy Israel. They wrapped the Holy of Israel. They bethought not on his hand, in the day in which he again bought them from the hand of the troubler. As he set his signs in Egypt, and his great wonders in the field of Tanis. And he turned the floods of them and the rains of them into blood, that they should not drink. He sent a fresh fly into them, and it ate them. He sent a paddock, and it lost them. And he gave the fruits of them to rust, and he gave the travails of them to locust. And he killed the vines of them with hail, and the sycamore trees of them with frost. And he betook the beast of them to hail, and the possessions of them to fire. He sent into them the ire of his indignation and ire and tribulation, sendings in by evil angels. He made a way to the path of his ire, and he spared not from the death of their lives, and he enclosed altogether in the death the beast of them. And he smote all the first engendered things in the land of Egypt, the first fruits of all the travail of them in the tabernacles of Ham. And he took away his people as sheep, and he led them forth as a flock in desert. And he led them forth in hope, and they dreaded not him. And the sea covered the enemies of them. And he brought them into the hill of the howling, into the hill which is right hand Gat. And he casted out heathen men from the face of them. And by lot he parted to them the land in accord of dealing. And he made lineages of Israel to dwell in the tabernacles of them. And they tempted and wrathed the high God, and they kept not his witnessings. And they turned away themselves, and they kept not covenant. As their fathers, they were turned into a shrewd bow. They stirred him into ire in their little hills, and they stirred him to indignation in their graven images. God heard and forsook, and brought to naught Israel greatly. And he put it away the tabernacle of Shiloh, his tabernacle in which he dwelled among men. And he betook the virtue of them into captivity, and the fairness of them into the hands of the enemy. And he enclosed altogether his people in sword, and he despised his heritage. Fire ate the young men of them, and the virgins of them were not bewailed or bewept. The priests of them fell down by sword, and the widows of them were not bewept. And the Lord was raised as sleeping, as mighty greatly filled of wine. And he smote his enemies on the hinder parts. He gave to them everlasting shame. And he put it away the tabernacle of Joseph. And he chose the lineage of Ephraim, but he chose the lineage of Judah. And he chose not the lineage of Ephraim, but he chose the lineage of Judah. He chose the hill of Zion, which he loved. And he as an unicorn builded his holy place in the land which he founded into worlds. And he chose David his servant, and took him up from the flocks of sheep. He took him from behind sheep with lambs, to feed Jacob his servant, and Israel his heritage. And he fed them in the innocence of his heart, and he led them forth in the understandings of his hands.